Hey guys, this is Argent here. So I know people say you just criticize liberal democracy. What would you put up in its place? And this is a fair question. And we will get a lot of traditionalist guys who will just duck the question and say it's a theoretical question and we can't address it. And they won't really posit an alternative. They'll just whine. And most of the time their whining is accurate and it's true, but they also just I think we have to posit it. It's good to criticize and attack this stuff. We have to have an alternative to offer. So I'll do a couple of videos explaining what I would do, what I would replace the current system with in various aspects, and eventually talk about how it's all going to work together. So, to that end, the first video we're doing is monarchy versus democracy. So I think I've said it, I am a monarchist. I'm not a monarchist in how it's normally stated. Most people are monarchists in this super limited constitutional lane thing. Don't know if I'd call myself an absolute monarchist, but I support the monarch having substantial and real powers. Honestly, I think the power the American president has would be a pretty good level for a monarch to have. Just executive power. An executive monarchy sounds pretty good to me. I think there is some merit to separation of powers and to having a legislature, and I'll talk about my idea for legislature would be very different. A legislature that is different from the monarch, because frankly, they can't be the sole force in society, and they never have been, even under so-called absolute monarchies. They've always been, there's always been other forces in society that they have to contend with and they have to work with. And you will have this American idea that the king could just do anything he wanted, and that's never been the case. And they'll find a couple examples, but the king has a lot of power, and he has a lot of wealth and soldiers and stuff. But much like any government, even totalitarian ones, they require the support or at least the acquiescence of the population. If the king is so bad and so intolerable to a majority of the population, he will not be king any longer. He may have an army and he may be able to fight a civil war, but even then, he can only fight a civil war if he has a substantial number of people backing him. Even if it's 20 or 30%, he needs that. So my point is, these things aren't as cut and dry as they would make you believe. It's not as if the king is just isolated from public opinion. He could do anything he wants. No one can challenge him. People have always challenged kings. People have always questioned kings. They may have obeyed them, but that's not the point, really. So why do I like monarchy? Well, first off, monarchs are not temporary politicians. And if there's one thing that I think, well, there's a lot of things that have destroyed us. One of the things I think that really has destroyed us is temporary politicians. You have these assholes that you elect, and they're there for a couple of years or maybe a decade or two, and then they leave. And their legacy is judged solely by what they did in office, what they passed, and not really by its efficacy or the long-term impact, because they're gone. You will have horrendous politicians who pass extremely destructive legislation, and Margaret Thatcher is one of them, some of her immigration reforms, and she will not be blamed for it. She will just be praised by some minor economic reform she made while in office. And Reagan's like this too, and they're all like this, and they do these thoughtless reforms that dramatically alter society and permanently alter it, and they have no sense of it because what do they care? They just see to the next election or to making money as a consultant in retirement. They have no long-term picture. They have no reason to have a long-term picture. A monarch is the monarch for life. The kingdom is to some extent his personal property, And you libertarians should like this. You take care of your personal property. If he really bollockses up the kingdom, then he he won't be as powerful. So it is in his best interest to govern effectively, to maintain order in society, to have the support of at least a plurality of the groups in society, if not a majority, if not an absolute majority. So he has these, and not just as a temporary buy-off, but over long term. Monarchs will build their power base, and the power base will be there for decades and sometimes for centuries. And they will kind of organically fuse together and just be and will be established and be a well-functioning machine. As opposed to democracies, special interest groups and different groups in society will switch back and forth, and it's all about getting that 50 plus 1 and then looting the other 49%. I'm not saying that never happens in monarchies, but there's a limit to it. Because at the end of the day, if the monarch does loot the other 49%, it will lead to a mess that he will have to deal with or his children will have to deal with. He can't just offload it to the next guy. And as with any of the horrible things we've passed, when we legalized abortion, when we legalized so-called gay marriage, when we did immigration reform, when we destroyed the public school system, when we did all these things, none of the politicians who did this had to live with the consequences. I know in America, the Civil Rights Act and the Great Society destroyed the black family and turned black neighborhoods into hellholes, into literal hell on earth. The body counts in a weekend at Chicago is like 60 guys some weeks. I mean, it's an absurd number of guys who die, and that just didn't happen. And you can say, oh, well, they had other restrictions. Yeah, but there was not literally genocidal levels of blacks killing each other. And you did not have 80% plus of black boys with no fathers. And some people further on the far right will say, well, that would have been inevitable anyways because of who they were. But I don't know. I mean, even if the crime rate would be higher, I don't think it would be anywhere near what it is today if it was like the 1920s where 80% of black children had a father. I don't know. It just seems obvious to me. But my point is, LBJ didn't care about it. He was only in power for 8 years. He passed all these thoughtless actions that led to literally hundreds of thousands of people dying. I think I have to look at how many people blacks have killed. I mean, other blacks have been killed by blacks since then, and subtract what the rate was before. It's probably tens or hundreds of thousands, though. And he was both directly and indirectly responsible for that, for third world immigration coming in and destroying large parts of America, just for all this crap. And he didn't have to live with it. And none of the people around him had to live with it. They just offloaded it to the next guy. And in monarchies, that doesn't happen. The monarch will want to leave a good, intact kingdom for their child, because their child is their flesh and blood and they are family. And even bad men normally care about their family. And I'm not saying this works 100% of the time, but I think it works more than these temporary politicians who will just move to another country or go live in their gated communities and not have to live in the mess they've created and not have to live with the consequences of the things they've done. So that's a big plus for me for monarchy. There is an eye to the long term. Now, the other thing I like is the tradition aspect. If you're on the center right and you think breeding, to a large extent, upbringing and culture and tradition don't shape the person, we're just atomized individuals, and it's basically, to quote Game of Thrones, the gods toss a coin, and you either turn out good or bad, and we can't determine why. It just kind of happens. Then you won't appreciate this. But monarchs are bred and they are raised from birth to be monarchs. to practice oratory, to administer, to manage relationships, to do just all the things the head of state would do. And they're trained from birth to do this, and they are conditioned to do this. And they're trained and conditioned by people who were trained and conditioned by their fathers and their fathers' fathers. And you think they get very good at it over hundreds of years. And you think they get an idea of what works and what doesn't work. And that collective wisdom would help them. The current politicians, they're just random guys off the street often. Like Joe Biden says, "Oh, I'm from some steel town." Well, why the fuck do I want some random asshole from some steel town somewhere? And I'm not insulting white working class guys. You guys are the salt of the earth. You're the backbone of the society. I'm just saying, if we want a statesman, if we want a head of state, if we want a leader, they're not the first guy I'd pick. I want someone who's used to giving orders, who's knows his position. Sorry, it's summer, so there's road construction everywhere. Who's used to giving orders, who's used to who knows how to manage relationships, who knows how to act with some dignity. And I want a guy who's a bit pompous and well educated. I mean, sorry, you can say what you will about Kennedy, but the guy was smart. He was literate. He did have that bit of an aristocratic air to him, but I like that. Obama is just some buffoon. He's some third world buffoon who has an education, put a tie on, and thinks he's a head of state. Well, he isn't. If you listen to him when he doesn't have a speech written by someone smarter than him, he sounds buffoonish and barely literate. And Kennedy could actually speak. And to my understanding, he wrote his own speeches. So you can say what you will about his policy, but if I was given a choice between following Kennedy, no ideology, just a man of his stature who came from what is an aristocratic family and was raised to be a leader. If I had to pick between him and Obama, I'd pick Kennedy in a second, even without knowing any of their positions. Like George Washington, and I mean, monarchists can say what they will about George Washington. He's a guy men would fight and die for. Think about all the monarchs who were these great leaders who men were willing to fight and die for. And think about aristocrats. And Washington was basically a Republican aristocrat. Republics traditionally have had aristocracies. They've not had kings, but they've had aristocrats much in the same way as monarchies have. And just think about all these leaders and think who people have been willing to fight and die for. And it's almost always a guy from a monarchy or a guy from a higher family because they are raised to be the leadership class. No one wants to fight and die for Obama. No one wants to fight and die for Bill Clinton or George W. Bush. It's laughable. It's laughable. Who would want to fight for a tool like Obama? Even if you agree with what he says. He's a fucking joke. He inspires no confidence, no respect, no healthy fear, just disdain. I mean, look at God bless Queen Elizabeth. You can say what you will about her, but she actually, you get the impression she gives a shit. That she cares about her people, that she cares about duty, that she has dignity. Obama has no fucking dignity. He hangs out with Jay-Z, who writes fucking rap songs about killing people. That's what Obama is. That's what most presidents for the last 50 years have been. I mean, God bless Eisenhower. Say what you will about him, but like Kennedy, he was a man of some stature. He had done something. He was a general. He knew how to give orders, and he knew how to lead. And that's what I want. So fuck egalitarianism, fuck the French Revolution. I want elitism. I want sophisticated, well-educated guys who are bred and raised since birth to lead and rule. Give me those guys. And part of it is, in that case, and this is what I'm getting to, they have a sense of responsibility. They know that, sure, they are given privilege all their life, but in addition to that privilege, they are taught responsibility. They have responsibility to those socially below them. They have noblesse oblige. They have a sense of paternalism. Obama is such a fucker because he doesn't have that. He had entitlement his whole life, but no sense of responsibility. Everyone told him he wasn't responsible for anything he did. He could just shit over everything. He would just take whatever he wanted, and that's fine. The old aristocracy didn't think like that. Some did, but they were often, well, guillotined, frankly, by their own class or by the lower class. So my point is, I think monarchy is a better system of government. And everything I said you could also apply to aristocracy. I'd rather have a dedicated aristocracy who are made and raised to be leadership, who are a bit taller, are a bit better looking, who are a bit smarter, and can orate better than the average person. I'll take them over random assholes we find in steel towns and third world rejects like Obama any day of the week. I mean, even like a lot of people, traditionalists don't like George Washington because he rebelled against a monarchy. He was a man you could respect and a man you could follow. Him and his successors, for the first couple decades at least, were by and large just solid stand-up guys. And you may have disagreed with them, and you may have thought their policies sucked or they had bad values, but they had a dignity to them and a forcefulness and a greatness that is solely lacking from modern day figures. And I think that, if for no other reason, that alone, that we could get someone to lead us who we respect instead of that we mock and deride. Someone like Queen Elizabeth or most modern kings, that I think would be a great step in the right direction. This is Argent Templar signing off.